Welcome back to another episode of the Co-op Connection podcast. Today we are joined by one of our newest vendors, Thrivent. Josh walks us through how Thrivent serves pastors, staff members, and churches as a whole, and the unique levels of financial help they have to offer. We hope you enjoy. Well, welcome, Josh. Welcome to our podcast room today.
Hey, Topher. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Absolutely. And you're from Thrivent.
Yep.
And I know that it's a little bit of a new name for our members because Thrivent's one of our newest vendors. Mm-hmm. And so that's why we do what we do. We're here to spread your word and what you do. And what better way than to hop on a mic and a camera and do this. So we'll jump right into it. And
sounds good.
Let's just start with who is Thrivent? What do you do? What's kind of some background story for you guys?
Yeah. So just starting out with who Thrivent is, we're a Fortune 500 financial services company. Really at our heart is we're here to help our clients develop financial clarity so that they can live lives of service and faith. Some practical ways that we do that is we help them build, grow, and protect from a financial aspect, and do that through kind of 5 key ways. Looking at purpose-based advice, we serve in insurance needs, investment needs, some banking needs, and also generosity programs that we offer. So just kind of a high-level overview of some of those things, but that's kind of who we are.
Okay. And just so our members know, you're a nonprofit as well.
So we're a not-for-profit.
Not-for-profit. Okay.
Yep.
So how does that work with you being a Fortune 500 and then a not-for-profit? What kind of, because I think a lot of people think Fortune 500, you're too big for us. You're too big for our church. You're too big for our ministry. So how do you correlate that with still being there for the ministries that we serve?
Mm-hmm. Great question. So I think the idea of when you start hearing a Fortune 500 company, to your question there of, oh, maybe they're too big for us, is we really see it as we're a partner in the ministry with the church. Okay. And there's a whole gambit of church sizes, from small, just starting out church plants. I personally am part of one in the area, but then to churches that have been well established for long periods of time, large congregations, and everything in between. Every individual in those churches, as well as the organization, the church as a whole, we really feel it deserves to have a plan when it comes to their finances. And so it doesn't matter whether it's the giant, large church or the one just starting out. The fact is that everybody and every organization deserves to have financial clarity and have a plan.
Sure.
And I think the benefit of being a bigger company ourselves is we have resources to serve the bigger companies as well as the smaller ones. And just having been around for so long, there's experience throughout those different stages, throughout different seasons that we're able to serve and meet at.
Great answer. I love that. Okay, perfect. I hope that brings some clarity. I just know in our minds today, it's okay, well, you're too big for us then. So that's great. And then you can answer this on a personal level. You can do it organizational wise, but why do you do what you do?
Mm-hmm. So a little bit of my personal background, thinking back to a time when my wife and I first got married. We were young, 22, 21, didn't have a clue about life apparently.
Sure.
But we knew that we loved each other.
That's all that matters.
Some people say that's all that you need, but there was a big question mark around finances and what do we do with finances, especially now that you're responsible for somebody else. For me, I didn't really have a clue. I understood the concept of spend less than what you make, but that was kind of about it.
Yeah.
So I started getting connected with some different resources and started putting together and getting the knowledge to have a plan. And the difference that having a plan made for us, it went from a place of confusion and questions to more confidence, knowing, okay, here's the next thing that I got to work on. Here's the next thing. So having a plan made a dramatic impact in my life, my family's life, when it came to those. And so personally, I want to help bring that to others, to bring the confidence that comes through having a plan and really looking at especially our churches, our pastors, their staff, their congregations is day in and day out, these pastors are serving their congregations, pouring their hearts out, their lives out for these people that they minister to.
Sure.
And this is a practical way that we can come along and partner with them and serve the pastor who's pouring out into their lives. And so that's a big reason why I do what I do is I've seen the impact in my life and see the impact that these pastors and staff members are having and want to have a similar impact in their lives.
What a great opportunity that is. I feel like there's often times where we forget just how much our pastors do for us and what they're called to do for us. And so at the end of the day, they still have a family or themselves to take care of. And sometimes there's a lot of questions that arise from that, especially at a church. A church financial realm is completely different than a corporation, completely different than, somebody that's just in the corporate world, the secular world, if you could say that. But just going into it, there's going to be things that they have to deal with as well. So I think that's awesome that you guys come alongside them. And you kind of segued perfectly for me. You mentioned pastors, you mentioned the staff, you've mentioned congregants at a church. So how does Thrivent benefit each person in that? You've talked about the pastors. I'm assuming you can help staff members as well, and then obviously down to the individual members at a church. What's the benefit with all of that?
Yeah, so several different facets there, and I appreciate a comment you had made, and I kind of want to back up just a little bit there of talking about the pastors who don't have a normal schedule like most of us. It's just the amount of time, effort, and energy that they pour into the lives of their members that they minister to. It is not a 9 to 5 kind of thing, and a lot of times it goes way beyond that. It's the weird hours of the night, the evenings, the weekends. It's almost like always being on call because there's always someone that has a need. And I mean, just practically want to say thank you. I mean, that makes a dramatic impact in our lives, our congregation lives. And so I think just giving honor to that and the work that they do is important. So now kind of coming back to your question of where do we serve or how do we partner, a couple different ways in there. And I think always looking at the individual level is kind of the foundation there of we all have to interact with money in our lives. There's no getting around it. It is a tool. It's not the end-all, be-all goal. It shouldn't be, right? But how do we steward this tool well towards the goals or towards the things that we know are going to be coming in our futures? How do we manage that well? And so we take a one-on-one approach to that, whether it's the pastor and kind of their planning needs or the individual staff member and their individual planning needs or the member in the congregation. Like everybody's story is different. Everybody's story is unique, and our backgrounds and upbringings and our goals for the future, they're all going to be different. And so it's helping create and individualize a tailored plan to the individual and their family. There's common things across everybody's plans that are going to be common, but how do we help give that clarity to the individual is really where we see that. And so helping the pastor, a lot of times they're so busy focused on everybody else that they can start running on E or maybe not take the time to get to a financially healthy place. That's where we step in. Some of my clients I talk to them like, hey, I want to minister to you. You're ministering to everyone all week long, all month long, all year long. Can I minister to you and help get to a place where there's financial health so you can continue pouring out knowing you and your family are cared for today, but also in the future.
Absolutely.
And I think sometimes, unfortunately, there's this thought of I'll get to it later, or these other needs are more important, or others are more important. It's really hard thinking about gardening, right? You're going to go out and water the plants. My wife loves to keep our garden. We've got all kinds of different things growing. And my girls love being out there. But we're going to go out and water the garden. So if you fill up your traditional watering pail, you're going to start, but then there comes a point where it's empty. And you can't provide the plants the nutrients or the things that they need if it's empty. And I think it's similar of if the leader is constantly running on E or is not at a healthy place, it's going to be really hard to continue giving to others from a place of empty. So coming along from the pastoral standpoint is just, it's a way that we can minister to pastors. Looking at church staff, and I mean, I think that we really view what we do as a ministry. And that's going to be true to the staff member or the member in the congregation. At kind of individualized level.
Wow. I love that picture. I've never thought about it that way, but that's a wonderful way for us to kind of visualize what pastors and the staff of a church are pouring into us. And so you have to have somebody that can come alongside them as well. And I think a lot of times people can, what does coming alongside look like? Well, can we just help out on a Sunday or throughout the week? But finances are something that everybody's going to deal with in life. Yeah. It's like you said, money is money across the board. But I love how you take an individualistic approach to each person and then say, well, how can we minister to you in this area?
Yeah.
So with that, with kind of the main areas that you might have, I think you mentioned there were 5 different things that you help out with. With pastors, what do you see? You can give me however many few you want. Where do you see the biggest areas that you guys are really coming alongside pastors? Is it the insurance realm? Is it the helping with, whatever sort of retirement plans they may have? Where do you specifically see this is where we're really helping out the most? So that other people can say, oh, well, we may not have that in place.
Yeah. Ideally, and I'll say it's true for the pastor, it's true anytime we sit down with an individual, is we want to take a holistic approach and look at their life, their goals, their finances as a whole picture, rather than siloing off one individual thing or one individual area. So that way we can help create as best a picture or a plan moving forward for the whole person. Trying to think, like, ideally you wouldn't want to go get your car worked on and going, hey, I've got issues with the car, and they're like, okay, great, we're going to go ahead and change the oil in the car and do that, but then they don't do anything with the oil filter or checking the belt or the other parts of the car. And then you end up leaving there thinking, hey, I got one thing solved, my car's good to go, and then the next thing you know,
you're stranded
on the side of the road.
Yeah.
Your alternator belt goes out like mine did. 2 weeks ago.
Oh, man.
So
a little too personal of a story.
Yeah. No, we don't need to go in there.
Right.
So ideally looking holistically at each of those areas, right? And everybody's need or need is going to be different in those 5 areas. And so, yes, we look at the advice option. Really, we want to help educate and help people understand. Because I think growing up, I think we could all point back, go to, okay, I wasn't taught this. We didn't learn this in school.
Sure.
There weren't these conversations. I think that is way more the norm than, oh, yeah, I learned all of this and I was taught all of it and I know exactly what I could do and should do. And if that was you, then great. That's a huge blessing. But that's not the norm.
Yeah.
So first educating to be able to give advice for helping those individuals and those families understand, hey, these are the things that we recommend or you need to do for your family based on your goals and your unique situation. So having the advice, like, we all benefit from having advisors and counselors in our lives, right? Proverbs talks about in the abundance of counselors is safety.
Yep.
So that should be true in our finances, is having people that we can get advice from.
Yeah.
The insurance of just protecting the things and the people that matter most to us. So making sure that protection is wrapped around and people have differing needs of that.
Absolutely.
Right. You talked about retirement planning or investments. Yeah. How are we growing those resources for our goals, whether they're short-term or mid-term or long-term? How are those growing and being positioned for the future? Helping, we help there as well. And then looking at banking. Sometimes there's needs on an organizational level or a personal level where having some of those banking resources and tools are needed. And then generosity. That's a huge piece in our organization and near and dear to our heart, but also how do we help our members live lives of generosity? And yes, we can be generous in a whole lot of areas. One of those is our finances.
Yeah.
How are we using our finances to help the other people around us, to help meet their needs as well? So a lot of times as we have those conversations, we're touching on those different areas just dependent upon what the need is and kind of where the individual's at, as well as kind of what that felt need is, because kind of through the different stages of life, we feel them a bit more real.
Wow, I love that answer as well. And so you've touched base on it just a little bit here and there, but to kind of answer this question in this sense, trying to think how I want to ask this. Why do you feel like it's important that pastors or staff members, whether you're facilities director or you're the operations, you're the business admin. Why is it good for those people to have financial clarity? Sounds like an easy question, but I would love to hear from you. What's the importance of financial clarity in these roles?
Yeah. So looking at financial clarity, I think of light, right? It's hard to have clarity on something or a clear vision on something that is not well illuminated.
Sure.
And from a spiritual aspect, from a faith aspect, I think it's important to look at that lens in part of answering this question. So personally, I look through things in life through a lens of faith. And so if we look at conversations around finance, if we look at the Bible and we look at Jesus specifically, Jesus talked about money more than almost any other topic in Scripture. And so he's talking about, the Bible as a whole is replete with places where money's talked about. It's one of the most conversated or one of the most taught things in all of Scripture. And I personally look at this as we have an enemy who's at work against us. And what better way to kind of make things difficult or challenged by kind of removing it and putting it off into the shadows.
Yeah.
And not talking about it. There's a reason it's called personal finance.
Right.
It gets very personal as soon as we start talking about money.
That's right. That's right.
So all the emotions start flying around,
Yep.
and there's a lot of emotions. Maybe it's ones of excitement or thankfulness, gratitude, appreciation, but there's a fair amount of shame or guilt or regret that are coupled in there as well. And kind of depending on where you're at, it's probably all of them at some point or another. And so having the clarity is we need to bring financial conversations back into the light, looking at it from what does the Bible say? What is spiritual wisdom? What's practical wisdom? To have more and more of these conversations around why is financial stewardship. If you look at Jesus' ministry, right in that last week of his ministry, he has two conversations on money that are both profound. And I think really I want to focus on the fact that he stopped and had those conversations, right? You have the widow's mite, where this woman is giving out of everything that she had. And then you have the parable of the talents, both at the end of Matthew. Both of these are right towards the end of his earthly ministry. And a lot of times we think, okay, if you're writing a letter, or you're having a conversation, you're about to wrap things up, your time is running short. It's like, hey, let me hit these key points.
Right.
So that you know these are important before.
Let me highlight these one more time for you.
So Jesus does this at two different points, talking about money. He stops and has a conversation around money. And so I think the question is, if Jesus is going to have these conversations around finances on a regular basis, shouldn't we probably be doing the same? And so when things get brought into the light, there's clarity that happens. We can have wisdom applied to our situations where it's not just trying to figure it out on our own.
Right.
And there's the things that we don't know that we don't know. And so having someone who has the expertise or is further down the road or who has that experience speaking into those things to help us create that can lead to a lot of freedom.
Yeah.
Really honestly. I think the phrase financial freedom gets thrown out a lot, and what that looks like, maybe your definition is different, but there's also a spiritual component to it, of it not being the master and ruling of our lives. And it's really easy that the things that are kept in the shadows start getting an unhealthy grip just on our lives and holding really tightly. So I think part of the clarity is the openness and willing to bring things into light and start having conversation.
So speaking of clarity, like you've just mentioned, one of the questions I had is, you're in the world day in and day out. So what trends are you seeing with how churches are approaching financial planning, whether it's the organization as a whole, the individuals? What kind of trends are you seeing in that world?
Yeah, looking at an organizational level, and then obviously there's the personal level. I was just reading last night, actually, at some church trends and talking about how much of church budgets on average are allocated towards different areas. And one that caught my eye was almost 50% of church resources are allocated towards payroll.
Really?
To personnel.
50. Okay.
Which just really kind of shocked me.
Yeah.
I mean, that feels like a really large number. And obviously, every church at their different stages is going to be at a different place.
Sure.
But there's so many resources or so much that goes towards taking care of the staff, taking care of the pastor or the other support leaders to keep things running. And to me, one of the things that's super important with that is it's not just an expenditure of resources, but how are we caring for these people? And I mean, maybe it's just the world I'm in of part of caring for people from a financial aspect is how can we make sure they've got that financial health?
Wow. Yeah.
How can we come alongside to help build up into a financial healthy place? Just because the income goes up doesn't necessitate or mean that you're going to be now financially healthy.
Right.
Having that plan becomes incredibly important. And looking at kind of an organizational level from church financing is like, how do we not just be in today, but looking long term to the future of what does it look like 5 years, 10 years from now? What about the next generation? On the personal side, we're thinking, okay, what about when I get to this next stage? Maybe if you're young, okay, when I have kids. And then it's when the kids go to college, or then when I retire, and then the next stage. I mean, it's kind of it's a similar story, or there's some parallels there of how are we focused on today, but the future, but then the next generation. Ideally, we're building churches that are going to last multiple generations, and so how are we building a financially sustainable path for that moving forward?
Wow.
So
what a great picture. Another great picture that you provided. Never thought about it that way. If you're in an organization, I think about what's going to happen when my daughter is ready to go to college or wants to do something with her life, whatever that may look like, and then retirement. But in a church organization, you're saying, okay, well, we've got a next generation that maybe we want to add staff members, or we want to grow the congregation, or the pastor's going to retire, so he's thinking about personal retirement. But then retiring means at the organization level, he's retiring. So what does that look like? That's something very interesting that people should start thinking about. So, and then I think a good illustration of this, you've mentioned this before. I'm going to butcher this, so I'm going to let you do the example. But it's like a house. There's different rooms that people might be in. I'll let you take it away on that.
Yeah. Nice setup.
Yeah. I try.
So looking through a framework, I think it's always helpful to have to have a framework with the things that we look at, especially when they get more complicated, trying to keep things simple so that way we understand it, we stick with it. But thinking through finances of a house, right? If you were going to go out and build a custom house, there's going to be different things that are unique and important to you versus me. I mean, having 5 daughters, I need a whole lot of bedrooms and a whole lot of space. So keeping those things in mind, I want the kitchen to look a certain way, or the living room, or this many bedrooms, this many bathrooms. The same is true in our financial goals or personal goals, is they're going to look a little bit unique from person to person. And so how do we build and help create that to each person's unique needs? Now, there are certain things that are just going to be true in everybody's house, or in a good house. You're going to have a good foundation. You got the bedrooms, the living room. You have a roof. You got the 4 walls. So there are things that are common across the board. And so we work on those things and really thinking through kind of that financial planning framework is really there's 7 main areas that we focus on when walking through with individuals to help them get that financial clarity. So we got to start at the bottom, and that's cash flow planning, is making sure you know what's coming in, what's going out, it's meeting your needs, because that's how you build the rest of the house.
Right.
Then you got to have a strong foundation, is looking at protection, right? We know that life happens. We know that storms happen, and so they're going to come and beat against our house, so to speak. So how do we have the right protection in place to take care of us and our family moving forward in the future? From there, we go into accumulation or saving, really, is how are we positioning things to grow for those longer term goals? Maybe it's retirement or purchasing a house, college, those kinds of things. So how do we position those and accumulate? Then there's going to come a point where it's time to distribute. How are we making sure that the resources we've saved up and are using in the retirement context, they're not going to fall short? We're not going to outlive those. So how do we create a plan there? And then up at the kind of the top, thinking as we get closer to the roof, is legacy. Right? We can't take anything with us.
Right.
And so what's our plan for who's going to manage that when we're gone?
Yeah.
Is it the church, people, government? Who's going to do that? So creating a plan around our legacy and kind of running side by side through each of those areas as we build up, looking at taxes and having a strategy around our taxes is important. And then the other side is generosity. Is through all of these other levels is how are we being generous? How are we making the most of the impact with the resources that we have at those different stages? Because we could say, hey, I'm going to be generous one day in the future, but I think if we look, it's really hard to be generous in the future if we're not generous today.
Wow.
And so starting to build in those habits. So looking through those 7 areas and walking through those over time with our clients and individuals to help create the plan to give them the financial clarity.
Well, this has been phenomenal. Thank you for coming on and kind of talking to us. And I think my biggest encouragement is just to have our members reach out to you. Yeah. I know there's going to be a lot of people that say, okay, well, this is what I know, but where do I start? Or what looks best for us? And so my encouragement is just reach out. I'll have your information at the end so that you can reach out to Josh. And we just appreciate all that you're doing for the organizations, the pastors, the staff, and even individuals as a whole and our members. So we appreciate you guys.
It's truly our pleasure.
I know.
Thank you.
I know. Thank you. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Co-op Connection podcast. For more information about the Co-op or Thrivent, please visit our website, www.churchcoop.org.